Whether you're leading for the first time, leading through change, or learning to lead all over again, this space is for you. No fluff, no gimmicks, just real talk from those who've led through challenges, adapted under pressure, and thrived in the face of change. Welcome to Command to Corporate, where leadership isn't just taught, it's lived. Let's get to work. All right, welcome back, everybody. I am
Hey,
LP. That is T. T, how you doing?
I'm doing great. The weekend's here. I got a fresh cut and I feel like a brand new man. So
All right.
I'm good.
Yeah, I do. I got a fresh cut too, but I try to keep a fresh cut, as you can see.
Yes. Mr. Clean over
Yeah,
there.
that's right. Got that breeze or that heat killing the top of
Oh, I
my
hear
head.
you.
Yeah,
Well,
whenever I'm in
good.
the backyard, I'm telling you, I wear a hat all the time because I'm not trying to lose skin after the hair is gone. You know what I mean? So
Is there
yeah,
hair under there?
no man.
No.
Yeah,
That looks
seriously,
good,
guy.
brother. Oh,
Yeah,
man,
but
I'm
this,
almost there, brother.
you hold it on. You hold it on. Shoot, by the time I was what late 20s, boy. Yeah, I was giving up on the ghost then. So
We started shaving then. All right.
yeah, man. So, but yeah, all is good. Good week. I mean, I was productive. Took off a few days during the week. Did some yard work, so everything felt good. So I was good.
All
And I
right.
think last time we talked, still going strong on the working out. So
Nice.
I'm feeling good about it. Yeah,
Good
man.
stuff, man. Well,
Yeah.
weekend's here. So let's get this started.
All right, let's go. So today's episode, we are talking about profits
Hmm.
versus people, and we will jump into it. So first thing we're going to talk about: have you ever worked in an organization where you felt profits were clearly prioritized over people, or vice versa?
Yeah, I think I worked for a big publicly traded company, S&P 500, so pretty massive, pretty well known company. Specifically, I worked in a warehouse environment, and so this is actually was my first job after I transitioned out of the army, and it was a total shock. So this company tracks profit. So I'm in a warehouse first of all,
Yeah.
and we're measuring productivity and therefore profits, and so they measure it, so I have to report hourly, and
Mm,
so
what?
that's hourly. So imagine, every hour you sit there like, all right, how productive were we? So we're looking at what we're supposed to produce, what we produced, what the errors are, and then hourly you upload that information to whoever supposed to be observing or like kind of monitoring that. And so, yes, that's it. Almost seems micromanagement, but I get it, But that's the way they operated. So, as a result of that, one, that's the culture of the organization. We're
Mm,
all about efficiency, is what they call it,
yeah.
and productivity. But
Mhm.
the culture it created, it was just like it's all about numbers, and you kind of almost try to start getting sucked into that culture a
Mm,
little bit, and then like all you care is about numbers. So I'm like, talking to my managers like, hey, your team underperformed this last hour. Like, what's going on? What happened? Is there
wow.
down? Yeah. And then every 3 hours we would we would like just to take a 15-minute break, and so all the associates would go and just have a break, and then managers will come down, would huddle and review our productivity for the last 3 hours.
Gosh.
Yes.
That does sound like micromanagement. God, dog.
Manager by manager, you're like, all right, this is how much you produce. So like, and numbers are like stacked against each other by name, by floor of like how productive or not, you were. So yeah, I've definitely worked for an organization like that, and it wasn't very fun at all.
How did the people feel about that? Did they feel that it was that kind of environment, or were they just used to it?
Um, I think it's everybody is shocked initially, because it's like, oh my god, like I didn't know this stuff happens. It's just like your reaction. It's
Yeah.
kind of the natural reaction people have. It's like, you're monitoring me hourly. Like, that's, it's weird. The lower associates generally are, they're given feedback not hourly, but usually like during that break, that 15-minute break. So the
Still,
manager would go
that's
back
so
and,
often.
yeah. And so, like, in that 15-minute break, when I'm huddling with my managers, I'm like, hey, you know, here are your bottom three poor performers on your team.
Whoa.
I need you to go counsel them.
What?
Yeah.
What?
So you have to, this manager goes up and like, hey, let me see you. How are you, processing these products, so they monitor and say, okay, well, I see your problem here. I think you need to make these adjustments to get people up to speed again. So
Wow.
yeah, it's crazy, and it goes a step further in that, like, weekly, the company automatically monitors the bottom performers in the company, in the
Hmm.
warehouse, and they're given a warning automatically.
What?
Yeah, it's
How often is this?
it's weekly.
I'm, I'm, I'm blown away. I'm blown away. I am
It,
blown. Well,
it's
and just
crazy.
to, if anyone listening has ever encountered anything like that, or has any kind of comment to this, please share. Don't be. Please put the comments so we
Yeah,
can see. But I mean, my mind is blown.
and there's some people that know, probably, that work there right now, and they're like, "Yep." So if you know, you know.
I mean, I worked in like a manufacturing environment,
Hmm.
and it's production lines, people on the lines, various stages within a plant, different
Sure.
stages of making a product, and they all want to hit their numbers.
Yeah.
Machines or lines are capable of, depending on a product mix and different things, but it's not down to that level of detail. You do review your financials. That's a daily thing. So following the end of the shift, you're going to review your labor, which are the people, material usage,
Yeah.
your waste, any kind of variances. If you had people on other clocks, whether it was
Mhm.
training and things like, other things that was going on, that you took them off so you don't impact the production numbers,
Yeah.
things like that. And what's an acceptable limit to allow, how you respond to it. But from the time that I worked there, I mean, people had been there years. I mean,
Mm.
10, 20 years after I was gone, still there, still doing it. It was back in the day, I would say, when people like got into something like that, like in a kind of those manufacturing environments, and I'm just staying, and you progress in the company, move around. But that's what I'm started doing.
Mhm.
For whatever reason, I just stuck with it, and it's fine. The overtime's there, whatever the case may be. But you are financially driven. But I didn't see it impacting the people so much. But at the same time, it became part of the culture of, I want to hit my numbers.
Ah, okay.
So now you're like, I do want to do my best.
Yeah.
I don't want my machine to be down. If
Yeah.
if it's down, I'm like, mechanics, get it back up. I want to do my best and,
Yeah.
and crank out these numbers. So, but at the same time, everyone knows each other. They've been there so long. So
Mm.
I remember standing in the hallway, receiving a new employee, and greeting so many people as they came through the door. And it's like, dang, you know everybody. But it's like, after a while, you know so many people, and it's a real
Yeah.
friendly. And I mean, a lot of those people are friends to this day. And this was years ago. Um, so though it is clearly a profit, production based environment,
Sure.
and I can't say that there was little elements of, giving back to the people, maybe, some kind of event day or something like that. Little activities, a lot of activities actually here and there within the company, to make it fun and light. But I think it's the people that made it enjoyable, like having the right supervisors, and which can be a challenge in itself. But I think having the right management, that's what made it enjoyable to say, we collectively enjoy one another, family environment. Everyone knows each other, and we're okay with the production and hitting the numbers. So it
That
was like a
sounds, yeah.
balance.
Yeah. So I think that's really ideal. And I was thinking about it, like even during in that job, I was like, man, we need that. Like that's what I wanted to take us on that in that particular job that I was in. But like honestly, it was just the culture was not there to support that, and it's just like, you're there like almost 12 hours anyway, and
Oh
it's like
yeah.
the last thing you want to do is spend more time. But that sounds like, so why do you think you had that culture there? Like what drove it?
Drove which culture?
So like for us, it was the culture was all about just, you're really not there to make friends. You're just there to hit your numbers and stuff like that. I mean, the company drove it. There
Yeah.
was People did not have that internalization of like, oh, I got to hit my numbers. It's
Yeah.
more like the associates were like, man, I got people breathing down my neck to make these
Oh
numbers.
yeah. No, I think it's probably goes back to way before me,
Mm,
because that company has changed hands, ownership over the years. But I think
mm,
that initial ownership helps set that tone
gotcha.
where people came in and they felt like, even like the company cared about the people,
Got it.
where that was already established within the people. So because they felt the company cared,
Mm,
they in turn gave back to the company.
mm,
So they're like, hey, they're great benefits, whatever the case may be. So I'm going to do my best. I love working here. Even to this day, plenty of people say I love working here. So I think it's something that established. So even though the hands have changed, they can say, oh,
right.
management sucks, but it's already built in you. Everyone knows each other. So it just kind of keeps going. No one's leaving. No one wants to lose their job. So it's almost like it's already instilled.
Was it a publicly traded company?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I
Yeah.
was I was thinking like, why is it? You
But I
know?
think it's this probably the way you describe it. It's like they established that from the beginning that
Yeah.
it's about numbers.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and it's like, this is the way, because you've established this is the way you're going to operate.
Yeah.
And for whatever crazy reason, every hour we're going to check. And, it's a little OCD, but if you feel like that's how
Yeah.
we want to operate, fine. But, well, let me ask you a question. Did you see that there was high turnover in that environment?
Yes. So that's kind of the downside of having that culture, right? So there was a huge turnover. It's like people would come in, and they would stay maybe for like a month or two, and then they'd leave. So yeah, it was extremely high turnover. Like people just do not last because you're standing on your feet. The shift itself is like 10 hours, so
Yeah.
you stand on your feet. There's literally no chairs whatsoever in the warehouse, none.
Yeah.
And then you're walking around with safety shoes. So it was a bit of shock to people, that never worked in the warehouse. I get that, but being pushed so hard, especially coming, this being one of your first jobs, it's very young people that generally work there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
people
then
don't
also
take it.
turn over quickly too, those same young
Exactly.
people, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when you think about like back in the day when, the automotive field came up,
Mhm.
and, back in the industrial type environments, and
Yeah.
I could be completely wrong in the way I'm describing it, but, I think about automobile.
Mhm.
It comes to town, it's providing all these jobs,
Yeah.
it's stable, so to speak. You just got to keep cranking them out. If you look at those old videos, they're just there. They're there from the time I graduated high school. I'm in there
Yeah.
until I retire,
Yeah.
but and those places still exist today.
Mhm.
But trying to get more younger people to come in and say, do the same thing. Now when all these resources out here and things where you could tap into other things, it's like, man, this might be an easier way, or I'm gonna think about an easier way to make money. It's
That's
like, this is
true.
not for me, because it's like immediate. I need some cash. But even when the space I'm talking about, there was still high turnover. There was a staffing agency on site, to
Oh,
help
really?
bring people in, temp
Yeah.
agency, because that's how quickly, I mean, if you have to have them there, the turnover has to be significant, where they're
True.
managing strictly that. But at the same time, and that's just, I think, more for the, you get them in, and I've seen plenty of people stay, but I think nowadays it's like rinse and repeat. People are coming in and leaving out very quick.
Wow. Yeah. So it sounds like at least you had a better culture. So that's good.
Yeah, I would say so. And so, with that, coming out of the military, how did your leadership style change when results in that environment, since results were measured in dollars instead of outcomes or
So
lives?
yeah. So initially I was, I didn't know any better. And I was like, I'm just going to lead the way I know how to lead. It's like my leadership style didn't change or like I didn't think it needed to change when I first got in. And then I quickly saw that my leadership style is not working, Um, and then it quickly took a turn for like the worse, I guess, for lack of better words. Like when I started getting talked to about my team's poor productivity compared to other teams, and then so now all of a sudden I found myself me under a microscope, like, hey, your team is underperforming. Why is that?
Mm,
What are you doing about it? And I was like, oh my God. I was like, okay, fair enough. Let me make myself more visible, even more than I was. I mean, walking around more, seeing people, asking what the issue is, just kind of saying, how can I help you? Um, and so I started getting super involved. That was my initial reaction.
mm,
I still wasn't very happy with things the way they were going, and so I physically started even hopping online and like helping, like
wow.
it's initially I was like, oh, they're struggling, we're a little behind. Let me jump in, an extra person. Let me help. But that all of a sudden started becoming like every day I'm helping. I'm going to
Wow.
a team and like I'm jumping in and I'm helping. So it took a lot out of me, and
Dang, I
then
can imagine.
it wasn't really like it wasn't really helping that much either,
Yeah.
so like I hate to admit it, but I kind of just started like almost distancing myself. So I just started drawing back. Like this is a complete leadership failure on my part.
Mm,
I just started drawing back. I was like, man, I no matter what I'm doing, it's not working. And so I was like, well, I just have to push the team harder.
wow.
Yeah. And so I mean that's I became a jerk essentially.
Dang.
So now I'm bringing managers like, okay, what's going on? Have you coached these three performers? Have you talked to them? What are you doing? You identified this problem. This person is same errors every time, 3 days in a row. What are you doing about it? So I started managing from behind a desk by numbers, you
Mm,
know, and that's such a horrible, horrible thing to reflect back on it, because these managers are managing a floor, with like say 30 associates on it with machines and conveyor belts all over the place. And so like 30 people have questions all the time, want to go to the bathroom. And so the manager's
yeah.
really busy, and honestly, you probably don't have enough time to go coach everybody that's really not performing. But that's what happened. Like I think I totally kind of failed in that environment in that sense, because I just couldn't, like, it was hard for me to put in as much as I can and help physically even and still be underperforming. So I was like, I just withdrew and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna leave. I sent snippet to these managers like, hey, this is underperformed for an hour. Tell me why, because
Wow.
I have to pass up that justification, like why I'm
Yeah.
underperforming.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was really turned me to somebody that I did not want to be, and that was part of the reason why I actually left.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I remember coming into that environment, really had to learning over and over again with my manager at the
Mhm.
time, learning about the financials. But one thing I did is let me put myself in there in the employee's shoes.
Sure.
So I got on the line where different aspects of it where I could without any kind of specialized training and said, let me do it. To really put myself in their shoes, understand their pain. And it
Yeah.
looks, when you watch someone that's seasoned doing it, it looks easy. And then when you get on there, you're like, oh, this is not easy. So now I have a different level of respect, and also trying to still have the mindset of encouraging the people first. because
Absolutely.
if I treat them like I got your back, you got my back. So I'm going to take care of you as best as possible, created little incentives and things like
Mm.
that, little competitions, gave out awards, like who can
Yes.
produce the best numbers, even, but the machines always ran. So unless they were down, that's when you jump in. But then that's where I had to take coaching from employees to say, what do I do? And
Mm.
they would, until I could learn, they'd say, like, look, we just need to either go through, if like let's say there's a potential defect and we go through and we have to check it ourselves, or push it off and keep going, get it fixed, found the error, keep going and leave it for someone else to do. So then it's a balance, because now you have a bunch of head count on your clock that's not actually producing. So then you have to justify it, but it's like, do you eat it here in the beginning or do you eat it down the line somewhere else? And it was always that balance until I could really start to justify and know how to make the right decisions, but leaning on the people to take care of me and guide me, but as actually giving back to them until the point where they're like, hey, he has our back and we're going to do our best for him as well. And so I think it was a balance, but it worked out with me really trying to continue to focus on them, and they took care of me throughout my whole time there. Different lines, they took care of me, and I mean, it's not like people didn't get written up for things, and people weren't terminated, and but overall, even trying to compensate when I can, for monetarily, and
What do
take
you mean?
through performance reviews, because raises
Ah,
are
okay.
tied to that. So if they truly were outstanding, I'm going to go ahead and give it to you so they could get the most out of what they
Nice.
could get. So, you know, I really tried to keep that mindset. Like, if I took care of my soldiers in the military, how can I now take care of these people and get them to perform to the best? But then I've also had it where in another environment
Mm.
where like the line shuts down and it's just all eyes on me.
I
And then it's just like,
know
I
that
mean,
feeling.
yeah, but it's always happens. It's like, you didn't manage the line right. You didn't manage the production right, and
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. And then that's where would have challenges with, you know, when you figure sometimes these production spaces, there's an upstream process and a downstream process. This is in the middle. So
Mm.
if the downstream process breaks, well, I can't feed. Where if the upstream thing can't keep up, well, I can't keep going. And
Yeah.
all they look at is you're not doing it. And it's
Yes.
like, how the hell is this supposed to work?
Man, I'm getting some nasty flashbacks right now. Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it's just like, my gosh. So, and then I guess in that aspect, you can tell when a company is operating profit first versus people first.
mm.
That was clear. Are you there, T?
Yes, I'm here. Can you see me?
I can, but it seems like you're
Oh,
frozen.
yeah, that's really weird.
All right, maybe it'll come back. So let's see. We'll keep it going.
We may have to cut this out. That's really strange.
Yeah. I don't know what happened.
Uh, Let me stop and get back.
No, it's the same thing.
It's just frozen?
Yeah, it's just you're just frozen on the screen. So now I see you're disappeared,
Yeah.
and now you're back and it's just frozen. So let me try one thing here. Give me 1 second. Bear with us, folks. We're live and in action right here. We're not cutting anything out. Hold on 1 second. All right, T, we got you back.
Thanks, brother. Good to be back.
Yeah, all right, great, great. So as we move on to the next one, so can you tell when a company is talking people first, but actually operating profit first?
Sure. So same company that I previously mentioned. Um, there was a lot of talk about taking care of people. Like sometimes we want to hear the associate's voice. Make your voice heard so that they have like some anonymous messaging service to ask
Mm,
the leadership of like, hey, what could we do better? Which is good, but you still had a lot of high turnover, and you kind of like wondering like why. The talk is there, like
Yeah.
We want to hear your voice. How can we improve? And I think the problem and the root of the cause of a problem is they're not taking care of leadership. So they're talking
Mm.
to associates of like, hey, we want to take care of you. But the leadership, the leaders, the managers, the senior managers, they're not really training them up on how to actually like take care of people. So the problem exists. And so it's all talk, but they're not investing in their leaders. They're not in like leadership development, how to talk to people, what's the best approach. And that's kind of where like I was like, that's the problem. And you have young leaders need some development naturally.
And I would second that, and we talked about that previously
Hmm.
on a prior episode. Is that these leaders, they get put in these positions by a luck, attrition, no
Yeah,
one applied, whatever the case may be, and now you're there, or someone brings you in thinking, hey, you made a great individual contributor, why not make you in charge of people? And they've
exactly.
never done it,
Exactly.
versus maybe having like the potential's there, but
Hmm.
maybe, and it's hard to say like a contingency, but where they come in and come right into some kind of leadership development. Like, we see a good foundation, but you need to do this because,
Right.
or unless recruiters, as they're hiring and saying, you need to have demonstrated leadership. Like, if I'm looking at your resume, I don't see any leadership courses here. I don't see anything where you invested in yourself to be a better leader. So then, but I want to potentially hire you based on what you've said that you've done as an individual contributor, but then you're doing a disservice to employees. And
Exactly.
so, and I think
And
one
to
thing
your
about
point
that,
here, just
go
real
ahead.
quick, I mean, I just want to make sure, I mean, there are leaders in all walks of life. You either have demonstrated some sort of leadership in previous roles, where
Mhm.
you're in a position, and some people are just naturally, out of college or maybe, fresh into work. Yeah, you have that training, have some like demonstrate that you took an interest in improving yourself and taking some sort of leadership development course. So yeah, so I just
Yeah.
wanted to make that it's across the board. There's ways you can.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because I think one of the comments we did get in our first post, "Are leaders born or are they made?" The gentleman, I believe his name was Carlos, commented and said, I think they're made over circumstances. So those that aren't the natural, yes, you can be made
True.
circumstances,
Yeah.
but then it's also how are you invest in yourself to ensure that I'm getting better? Where is the want to be the best leader that you can possibly be?
Mm-hmm.
And how are you fostering that within yourself, that development to say, when I hit this role, I've learned how to do the task myself and I
Yeah.
can do them well, but how do I truly know how to coach? Am I going to say, do it the way I told you? If you just do it my way, you'll be successful, or I don't know how to do it. And I think when a company's talking people first, that's where you see a lot of the outward high level messaging, where you're
Yes.
just like, oh yeah, we instituted this program, and
Yes.
yes, and you're doing surveys, you're doing all of this stuff, but in the background it's like, why aren't you hitting these targets? Why aren't you? And that's the focus. Maybe you hear, on the production line or in the any scenario in a department, well, we need staffing, we're short staffed, come on, like, we can't afford that right now. Just doing that, and just keeping to push the numbers, the
Yeah.
goals. And I remember, even like when you talk about employees well-being, which would be people first, but it's only to an extent, because let's say you got some high level project going on and someone comes to you, maybe in a higher level role,
Right.
any level role for that matter, and they say, I can't take this, I'm overwhelmed, I need a pause.
Mm.
How is the leader going to respond? And this becomes that people first, or operating profit first. Do you say, okay, what's going on? If I give you half a day, is that enough? Looking at the timeline, if I give a day, can I give you a day? Can we just kind of, how are you trying to work with them through this, you know, their emotional state at that time, to help still get the job done, but give them grace? Whereas some might take that approach, or some might just say, no, we have to get this done. Look, suck it up. And then after the fact, will they then be looked at negatively?
Mm.
Will it be looked at, oh, I need to write you up? So where's the balance between operating profit first and people first? Because that can happen at any time. And we may have workshops and all this stuff saying, you got to be able to recognize when people are stressed or when things are happening with your employees. But are you really paying attention to that? Are you really saying, I'm listening, I hear you, and not looking at it as it's a negative thing?
But that goes back to culture, like I'm thinking,
True.
reflecting about my experience, and there wasn't any of that, honestly. It was black and white. It was like you're either performing or you're not. And if you're not
Yeah.
performing, you're getting written up. So you got to coach you. And what they teach managers is like, all right, poor performer, coach once, observe, coach second time, and then third time is a write up, and like you're pretty much out, And
Yeah.
so they don't coach like, hey, take into consideration like what's going on. Is this like on this person's second hour or like ninth hour?
Yeah.
It's like, are we overusing this person? Using this, the same process? Can we rotate some more? There's a lot of options out there, but I
I
think,
mean, just the pressure of that kind of framework,
mm,
like you said, there's turnover and high turnover, but
yeah,
just that kind of pressure, like unless you're just some kind of, hard charger, yeah, that's what I want. I want you to hold me, that's the mindset. Because to me, in orientation, that's what you need to hit people with that. Like, this is the way it works. So if you're not one that wants to be like you're in a competition,
sure, sure.
it's probably best if you just step aside right now and head on out the door. And give people straight up. Say that's the way we run. It's a constant competition, and
Yeah.
we're constantly looking for being number one in the marketplace, but you being number one in this building, on this line, against this product, whatever the case may be, this service. And if you're not willing, and we will be at times short staffed, we will put more pressure on you. Are you willing to go through those and say all of that? Because then that jumps into the next one. What's the risk when a leader prioritizes performance over people? And then what would be the reverse of that?
Yeah, and I think we pretty much covered that, I guess,
Yeah,
most of our
turnover. Like, yeah, people
turnover spending.
burning out, turnover. But then the risk is also, I guess, if it's people first, you can't dismiss the production, the goals, the targets. I mean, that's just the nature of business. That's the company. But it's like, how do you get the balance where you're keeping morale up, thinking about their well-being, but also hitting your targets and performing at a high level? Because at the end of the day, it's a service to someone.
Yeah.
And if you're sacrificing that, and people see it all the time. I get a package in the mail, the wrong thing shipped to me. Well, let's go all the way back to that production line
Oh my
where
God, it's
they're
so true.
pissed, stressed out, struggling.
Yes.
It's like, you just grab whatever, just throw it in there. I didn't check, no quality check, whatever.
Oh
That's what
man, that
happens.
that happened to me literally, I think 2 days ago. And I got a food delivery, and I look, and I was like, something was missing. I'm like, I had some, I don't know if whatever it was like $5, so it wasn't like something super cheap. The thing that was missing, the sandwich, was like $5. I'm like, bro, you had one job. Put the stuff in a bag.
Yeah,
I can
but
do
then
this
you don't know what happened that caused that. Yeah, that happened to me the other day. I was at this fast food place going out, and I was like, man, I really need something on my stomach. So I stopped
myself.
there. No line, no cars in front of the building, and you still get it wrong. I'm like, I'm the only one here. How does that happen?
Yeah.
You
And
know?
it goes back to everything that we were talking about. It's probably somebody who doesn't feel appreciated,
Yeah,
is being driven. It's probably that person in your particular example, like, has a clock, is looking at a clock, is like, oh my God. Like, I didn't realize this, but fast food places, not all of them, some of them have like a timer, of drive through. So it's like they have to close that order within a certain amount of time.
yeah,
So I'm sure somebody's just back there pushing these employees, and it's like, at one point or another, people are going to say, this is too much pressure,
Yeah.
like every order, I'm looking at a clock. I'm like, I have to beat this clock,
Yeah.
so I can imagine it's just naturally people are just going to get exhausted,
Yeah, especially when you're coming up in a society now more than ever, we hear about well-being and all of
Mm,
these different things. It's like
hmm
you have to make that shift. Somehow you have to find that balance, and if it means being, like I mentioned upfront out the get-go during orientation, is saying like, look, this is the way it is.
yeah.
This is a fast-paced, high demand, performance driven place. At the
hmm
same time, we may compensate, you have your time off, but when you're working, you are working, and then letting people make their own decision. And so now, what are the unintended consequences of performance metrics focus solely on financial results? And I think we've hit on that. I mean, the turnover that can happen, but I think it also, depending on how those are cascaded down. So
Mm,
let's take it at the very top level. So now you're going to senior leaders, nothing people related, no focus on that at all,
right.
just numbers driven. Depending on the leader, they might turn around and say like, "Hey, look, we can't get this done. Like we're short staffed.
Right.
That's not reflected here. Like people are quitting. Our turnover is high. We're not getting people, our hiring number, people are hearing about it, people aren't applying to jobs,
Yeah.
things like that. And then now if that leader can't drive it because they know the people aspect, well, then how does that leader look?
Yeah.
Now you're not a team player, you should be able to get this done, and it just becomes, why can't you get it done, versus considering the outcome of this type of culture. Like you say,
Mm.
we are just a strictly numbers culture, but where are you reflecting everything? Because amongst all those financial, there's a cost to turnover, there's a cost
Yes.
to hiring.
Yes. And that cost, I mean, invest in people. Like that's crazy. Like invest in your leaders. I think that would be worthwhile. But also, I think to add to your point, like I see it as like an organization, a job, or a company turns into a machine, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
where it's like input, it's just all about like thinking about what's going in, what's going out, and the people that work there are just the cogs in the machine.
Yeah.
You know, one wears out, boom, have
Get
another
another
one.
one. Yep.
Let's put it in. But then that also means that these people are going to say, you know what, I'm not doing anything more than I'm supposed to. Like this
Yeah.
is what I've got. I was brought here to do. That's all I'm doing. I'm not flexing. I will stop working unexpectedly and leave unexpectedly and break unexpectedly, just like a machine.
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
that's kind of what the risk is. You treat people like a machine, they'll behave like machines. So there's not going to be any flexibility whatsoever.
And people start to pick up on that throughout the organization, because
Mm,
when they see people, quit or get let go, or,
mhm,
if I'm not in that mindset, which everyone hears now, is like, I know that if I'm gone, you'll get someone right after me right away. It's not like my departure is going to cause some kind of significant pain. Are they
right.
going to spend some days mourning the loss of me? Are they going to reach out to my family? Hey, sometimes it's like, it is what it is. They're gone. Next up, someone else covered down until we get someone else, but keep it moving. And I mean, rightfully so, because it is a business. The business has to keep going. But at the same time, people do feel that. It's like, you
Yeah.
actually do not care. I'm just a warm body, especially when you're in labor type roles, where,
Yeah.
on assembly lines, production, whatever case, it's even worse in some
And
cases.
and it depends on the type of company. It could be even worse. So if your company is, very very customer, service oriented or customer facing,
Hmm.
even worse, because now you got this one person talking to who knows how many customers a day, or packaging stuff for customers, or however many packages. That one person could reach out and touch, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 customers a day. And now potentially 30 customers have like a very bad,
Experience. Yeah.
right, experienced opinion of your company. So it
Yeah.
just
True.
ruins your reputation. It's like
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
So good points.
Yeah. And is there a time when it's right to let people go for the sake of profits? And how should leaders do it with integrity? And to me, I mean, when it comes down to basically, it's all based on your goals and the
Yeah.
targets set. So if those things are black and white, and it's like at the end of the day, and as a leader, you've done your due diligence. You know,
Mm,
you've tried to address the performance issues. You've given feedback. It's not this blindsided thing where it's like, okay, we're terminating you. You know, and you've
right.
put forth the effort, and you've actually
Right.
invested in people and took the balance of profit tied to goals versus people and your well-being, and then they're just absolutely at the end of the day not performing. Well, then as long as you're upfront and you've been transparent and you've documented and you've
Yep.
shared and given them opportunity,
Yep.
then it's completely, you've done it with integrity, you've held them accountable, but you've tried to, say something and give them coaching and everything, and
Mhm.
not just sit back and say, I'm gonna just see how this plays out. And then when they finally fail, you're like, oh yeah, you failed. Here's your warning. Here's your write up. Well, here's a termination.
That's
No,
what
I've
happens.
I've
Yeah.
I've given it. Yeah, and it happens.
Yeah.
And I see these skits online where, people decide to resign immediately and they're like, oh, we want 2 weeks notice. Well, you
Yeah.
just fired this person and walked them out straight away. So clearly you don't need that.
Man, we must be watching the same thing because I definitely see that all the time too.
Yeah,
I'm sitting
this
there, I'm learning from those things, honestly. I was like, yeah, that's very true. You're right. Oh man. So I think, like if you firing people for profits, like, if your business is just going out of business and you're like, all right, you know, I need to let somebody go because, like, I mean, I just can't pay everybody, but we're not doing enough business. That's something maybe I understand, maybe
yeah,
sacrifice one for the many or
yeah,
sacrifice a few for the
yeah,
many. Got you. But even in that, I think the most, ethical way to do it is just be honest with people. I think people would appreciate that so much more, and like say, hey, we're not doing as well. I mean, as you can see, you probably they could tell. And when you sit and have that honest conversation, guess what? They're going to be pretty blunt and honest with you too.
yeah,
That's going to be the best exit interview you're going to have because it's
yeah,
going to be like, listen, yeah, they're going to tell you like, yeah, no ish. I can tell you why our business has failed. Which is
yeah.
good feedback. Um, so yeah, so I think that's honesty. I still go back to honesty. Best way to
Yeah,
do it.
and it goes back to establishing that as part of the culture,
Hmm.
and getting that set from get go, where there is transparency and openness and
Yeah.
things like that. Because then when you think about these companies making all this money, and it's like, well, then how can you actually reinvest those profits back into the people, so to speak? And I know companies do it. They have programs, and they're now whether people take advantage of the
Mhm.
programs, that's totally different. But you're making it available.
Yeah.
You might have a family day or Christmas parties, and you bring in lunches, and so you're doing little things here and there to say like, hey, at the end of the day, we do appreciate you. But I think a step further would be reinvesting those profits into the leadership.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you were thinking the same thing. You knew where I was going with it because it's like, make it mandatory. I think they've, again, going back to, well, they're there, they don't need that. They do need it. They are instrumental in their business unit. Their behavior set the tone for the rest of the whole organization. So as a leader, you're setting, and you come in there, you know arrogant, this and that, you could end up cascading that behavior down to other leaders,
True.
where then now they're emulating you, because guess what? You made it. I want to be like you one day. I guess this is how you go about it.
Yeah. All about investing in leaders. Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, honestly, business owners, think about it. Like you're investing in your people, that's really investing in your company. Like that's what you're investing in. You're putting it right back in. But the upside to that is that our people are really going to appreciate it. Like, oh wow, like as an employee, now I have this new skill. It makes me more marketable, you know? And even if I'm not thinking about leaving the company, I still feel like, oh, I have this new new professional skill that I could add on my resume. And now I know what I'm doing. I could, talk the talk and do to do. So yeah, I think that's probably easier. But so let me ask you a question. Would you rather see profits invested in you or bigger paycheck? So like when I say in you, as in like non-monetary.
I think if the company is already compensating well, like I would
Mm,
rather see the other.
yeah,
I mean, I know a lot of people are going to say, I can't say a lot of people would, because I think nowadays people are like, it's not, everything is not about money. I mean, if first you want to have a good living wage to be able to
very true.
sustain yourself and save for your future, which people and take vacations and have a fulfilled life while you're out here, hustling and bustling. So, but I think if I could see that way and saying like, especially the investment in the leadership, I think is key, and really saying how are we going to what would be key to shifting the culture.
Mm,
We could do surveys and all this stuff, but is what we're thinking we're delivering meaningful for the people? And maybe that's the thing, is like, what do you want? Just straight up say to the people, what do you want? And of course you can't answer, but what are those top three that keep bubbling up? It's like, what do you want? Okay, we're going to give you what you want. We're going to find a way. And if we can't give you the pie in the sky version, we're going to give you the closest thing that we can get to that pie in the sky.
So I guess last year I was helping lead a project in the company where
Hmm.
we're transitioning to SAP. Previously there was a whole bunch of other systems that were doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So now we tried to consolidate everything to the SAP system, right? And it's a pretty huge effort because now you're trying to establish a new system company wide. So naturally, like people resisted because they don't want to learn a new system, and they got used to their old system and they know how to do it. And it took a long time, and there was a lot of training involved, you know. But then I started thinking, I'm like, this is amazing. I'm like, this company is investing in their people, and like, in developing communication, I'm like, why aren't we highlighting this? Yeah, sure, it's gonna suck a little bit. You have to learn a new system, but I'm like, hey, folks, like, this is normally like a $3,000-4,000 worth of training on our side.
Oh yeah.
You're getting it for free.
Yeah.
Company is investing in you.
Hmm.
Now, the old outdated system that's on your resume, nobody cares about it.
Yeah.
You go out anywhere, nobody was like, "What is that?" No,
Yeah.
everybody wants to see SAP.
Yeah.
And then once I started thinking about that, I was like, this is what we got to advertise. Like this is great, and I think maybe that hopefully, I think that helped, soften that resistance a little bit, because now people are realizing like, oh yeah, like I have a new professional tool in my toolkit. And yeah, this is like $3,000-4,000 worth of training that I'm getting for free, and I'm getting paid to do it at the same time. You
Yeah.
know, it's kind of like one of those rare times, like when you're army, you're like, oh, they're paying me to learn how to fly. Psh, all right,
Yeah, for real.
so I'm all about it. Let's do it.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
think for people like in that exact situation, maybe taking it for granted, but then that same thing that you then list on your resume when you leave gets you in the door someone else. It's like, well, I guess I did get something out of it.
yeah. And
Yeah.
maybe that's a takeaway. I think maybe what I've noticed is that some leaders that really genuinely care, and they do a lot for their people, right? But some leaders don't make that connection. It's like sometimes you got to let them know, like, hey, here's the benefit of us doing this training or doing that.
Yeah.
I think that helps people makes that connection. You're like, oh, they're really investing in me. That's pretty cool.
Hmm.
Wow. And so that's I hope some people take away is that, like, don't think people are going to make the connection automatically.
Yeah.
Like people that are doing SAP did not make that connection automatically. Like they really were hating it so much that they were blocking all the benefits out.
Yeah.
Sometimes as a leader, you have to, like, shed some light on it. Like, hey, you're focused on the wrong thing. Like, think about it
Yeah.
this way. Look at this also as a benefit.
Yeah.
So I hope people kind of, take that as a way as well.
Okay. Awesome. And so I think these last two questions I would want to pose to our listeners.
Hmm.
And the first one is, if you were building a company today, or if you're in a company, working in a company, how would or how should a company ensure people and profits stay balanced? What do you think the approach should be to do that? And how should that be kind of built into the culture? I really like to understand people's comments on that. And then, have you ever had to choose between delivering results and protecting your team?
Hmm.
I mean, I would really want
Great
to
question.
hear what people have to say. Like, and again, have you ever had to choose between delivering results or protecting your team? Or, what has the difficulty been in trying to do that? What
Yeah.
has been your difficulty in trying to do that, where you still deliver, but
Yeah.
then also maintain? Because at the end of the day, you want your team to know they can count on you. You have their back, you're advocating for them.
Mhm.
So, how has it been for you?
Whew,
So,
good questions.
yeah. So, I think we'll leave it at that. We appreciate everyone tuning in to Command to Corporate, and we will catch you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.